My dear friend, what if I told you that you don't need to fight to earn respect? Would you believe me? That sometimes a single moment of silence at the right time is more powerful than 1,000 justifications. I'm someone who has lived through more than 60 springs, and today I'd like to sit beside you as an old friend to share with you 15 lessons from the philosophy of Stoicism. Lessons that have carried me through anger, heartbreak, and loss, yet helped me keep peace within. If you too are searching for steadiness in an increasingly noisy world, then stay and listen with the whole seasoned heart that you carry. If just one of today's lessons made you slow down even for a moment to reflect more deeply, to live more gently, then I've done what I hoped to do. If you think this video might help a friend, a loved one, someone who feels lost, please share it with them. And if you'd like to continue this journey with me through future lessons, don't hesitate to hit subscribe. We're not here to move fast, we're here to go deep, and to go together. Lesson 1. The power of walking away. When silence becomes the highest form of dignity. I want you to imagine sitting in a meeting or maybe a family gathering. The atmosphere is calm, nothing unusual until someone, perhaps a coworker or a relative, makes a subtle comment. Not loud, just a quiet, cutting remark. Enough to shift the air. And you know deep down they're testing you. I've seen this happen countless times, especially as we reach our 50s and 60s. By then, we're no longer eager to win arguments. What we truly crave is peace. So the question is, how do you respond? I remember being younger, and whenever someone disrespected me, I'd immediately rise to defend myself. I used to think I have to fight back. I have to show I'm not weak. But time has taught me this. Some battles are best won by not engaging at all. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus was once a slave. He was beaten, insulted, degraded, yet he never let it touch his soul. He said, if you want to be calm, learn to be thought a fool without resisting it. I know that's not easy to hear. But consider this. Does winning the argument really make you stronger or just more exhausted? A friend of mine, a retired doctor in her 60s, once told me she silently walked out of a tense meeting. No anger, no bitterness. She simply stood up and left like walking out of a room filled with smoke. And she said, I felt free. Because sometimes you don't need to speak to keep your dignity. Sometimes dignity lives in your silence and in the decisiveness of your exit. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "You can retreat into your inner self whenever you want a place no one can harm you." That quote has stayed with me through the later years of my life. Because now I understand no matter what others say or do, I always have the right not to engage. When you walk away, you don't lose. You simply refuse to trade your peace for a battle unworthy of you. And here's the most powerful part, you don't need anyone's permission to do it. So next time someone insults you or provokes you, remember this. You have a quiet, powerful option. Let it go, walk away, and guard your peace like a sacred treasure. Because the wise don't prove their worth with words. They let silence do it for them. Lesson 2. The attitude of self-respect. When you stop bargaining with your own soul. One afternoon in the park near my home, I met an elderly man. He looked to be in his 70s, sitting quietly reading a worn-out book. I asked him what he was reading. He said, "I'm rereading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Every time I read it again, I feel closer to myself." Closer to myself. What a beautiful phrase. Because many of us, especially after the age of 50, start drifting away from ourselves without realizing it. We live for the expectations of others. We soften our voices to keep the peace. We compromise because we fear upsetting people. And somewhere along the way, we begin to lose respect for ourselves, often over the smallest things. Marcus Aurelius, a great emperor who lived through endless trials, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." From that quote, I learned a profound lesson. Self-respect doesn't come from how others treat us. It comes from refusing to mistreat ourselves. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Someone constantly shows up late. They speak to you with little regard. They dismiss your time, your kindness, your boundaries, all the things you tried so hard to protect. And yet you keep tolerating it because you don't want conflict, because you're afraid of being too much. And day by day, you quietly lower your own standards. An old friend of mine, now in his 60s, once confided in me, I kept letting people borrow money without paying me back because I didn't want to seem petty. Until one day I realized I was betraying the value of my own labor and sense of fairness. I asked him, "So, what did you do?" He gave a small smile. I started saying, "No." And that's it, my friend. Self-respect doesn't make a scene. It doesn't need a grand statement. It shows up in the moments you say no, in the times you quietly step away, in the boundaries you hold even when others don't like it. I often tell my older students, in the morning before you leave your house, ask yourself, today will I live as someone I respect? Or will I once again negotiate with my own soul? Because self-respect is the pillar that keeps the spirit standing tall. Without it, you're easily swayed by glances, by words, even by silence. But once you have it, people will think twice before they cross a line. Not because you're threatening, but because they feel the quiet strength radiating from within you. Live as the person you want to admire. Self-respect is like a lantern, subtle but unmistakable. And at this stage in life, you deserve to walk forward with that light glowing in your heart. Lesson 3. The attitude of indifference. When you're no longer a puppet of other people's emotions. There's something I've come to realize after many years working with older adults, especially those who've weathered life's storms. They don't react as strongly as they once did. It's not because they've become weak. It's because they've learned how to stay still in the middle of the storm. Once a 68-year-old man, formerly a senior executive, told me this story. There was a time when my subordinates challenged me, made sarcastic remarks in meetings. In the past, I would have snapped back immediately. But then I remembered Epictetus's words, "It's not what happens to you that matters, but how you respond that defines you." So I smiled and carried on the meeting as if nothing had happened. That right there is the Stoic foundation of indifference. But don't misunderstand. Indifference isn't apathy. It's not giving up or not caring. It simply means you don't let other people's emotions control you. You still care, you still love, you still act with responsibility, but you choose what's truly worthy of your energy and attention. Have you ever had someone say something hurtful to you? Maybe a relative, maybe a coworker. Maybe they were trying to provoke you, or maybe they didn't even realize their words cut deep. But that moment when you didn't react, didn't defend, didn't explode, when you simply let it go, that's when you were at your strongest. One of my older students once said to me, "I no longer feel the need to win every argument. I just need to keep my heart from getting dragged into the emotional chaos others create." A true Stoic knows we can't control the world, but we can control the gate to our own soul. When someone insults you, belittles you, disrespects you, they're inviting you into their swamp. But you don't have to accept. You can step back. You can smile not because you're afraid, but because you know peace is more valuable than pride. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When someone speaks ill of me, that's their concern. My concern is not to let it wound my mind. Hold on to indifference like a soft but enduring armor, because the calmer you are, the less anything can hurt you. And sometimes your silence, your refusal to react, is the loudest, most powerful answer of all." Lesson 4. The attitude of gratitude. When adversity becomes a gift. A 65-year-old woman, a former accountant, once shared with me during a quiet conversation there was a time I was openly insulted by a family member. I was stunned. In the past, I would have gotten angry, argued back, or stayed silent and hurt for days. But that time, I simply took a deep breath and silently said thank you. I was surprised and asked, "Thank you? For what?" She looked at me and gently replied, "Thank you for the chance to truly see someone's heart. Thank you for the opportunity to practice my calm. Thank you, because I'm no longer the woman I was at 30. I believe only those who've been through pain yet refuse to let it turn them bitter can say something like that. That is gratitude in the Stoic spirit. Not a shallow thankfulness, but a deep way of seeing so deep that even misfortune becomes an opportunity." Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle to action advances action. You may not control what others do, but you can control how you see it. And when you begin to view offense as a chance to train your serenity, you reclaim mastery over your emotions. Think of a recent situation that upset you. Maybe someone said something tactless. Maybe someone was ungrateful. Maybe someone misjudged you. If you react on impulse, anger, hurt, lashing out, you're handing them control over how you feel. But if you pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? You've just turned a wound into new, tougher skin. Seneca once wrote, "A gift, even if refused, never ceases to be a gift." I once went through a difficult time with my own family where every word I said was misunderstood. It hurt. But thanks to Stoic philosophy, I learned to be grateful, because that pain taught me to listen more and argue less. Gratitude doesn't mean denying the pain. It means choosing to see it through a larger lens, the lens of someone seasoned, someone who refuses to become bitter. Because a grateful soul isn't always cheerful, but it is always steady. Not because life is easy, but because they've chosen to see life as a humble student would. Lesson 5. The attitude of inner mastery when the world no longer controls you. Have you ever sat quietly on a rainy afternoon, feeling exhausted by all the things you can't control? I've felt that way. The gossip behind my back, the people who misunderstood my good intentions, the events that unfolded in ways completely opposite of what I hoped for. And after many moments of silent frustration, I realized something: I was letting the outside world dictate my inner emotions. That's when I returned to the words of Epictetus, a man who lost everything. Freedom, rights, even health, yet lived with a strange and steady calm. He taught one simple but profound truth. You cannot control the world, but you can always control yourself. And that is the heart of this lesson. Inner mastery is the quiet power of those who've lived deeply. An old friend of mine, formerly a CFO, moved to the countryside after retirement. He told me when I was young, I thought I had to control my employees, the results, even what others thought of me. But the older I got, the more I saw what truly matters is keeping your heart steady when the world shakes around you. You know, the moment you start feeling okay with being misunderstood, unsupported, even underestimated, that's when you begin to truly master yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If something is outside your control, then it cannot truly harm you unless you allow it to." I know it's not easy, especially for those of us with sensitive, caring hearts. But remember, self-control doesn't mean closing your heart. It means choosing who is worthy of entering it. It also means you don't let one insult ruin your entire day. You don't let one rejection make you doubt your worth. You don't let one act of injustice make you forget who you are. Inner mastery is knowing when to respond and when to stay silent, when to speak and when to walk away. It's maturity without display, strength without force, and others, whether they admit it or not, can always feel it. So next time someone tries to provoke you, just smile. They're only searching for that emotional button to control you. But if you don't react, you remain your own master. And that is true power. Lesson 6. the attitude of doing what's right, even when no one's watching. One evening, I received a call from an old friend, a retired high school teacher now 70 years old. He said, "I've been retired for a few years. No more supervision, no one watching, no one judging." And I started to ask myself, do I still live by the same principles I used to? I was silent. Because that's a big question, not just for him, but for all of us. When no one is watching, how do you live? For those who follow Stoic philosophy, the answer must always be, live rightly, not for praise, but for yourself. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who lived more like a monk, once wrote, "Live as if every act were to be written down and read aloud before all mankind." But what he truly meant was this: live as if your conscience is watching you every day. Because the eyes of the world may look away, but the eye within you never sleeps. Have you ever been in a situation like this? A moment where you could lie to escape blame. You could stay silent to avoid conflict. You could hide because no one would ever know. But then, deep down, a quiet voice whispers, "I should have done the right thing." Epictetus once said, "We weren't born to please the world. We were born to live by reason and truth." One elderly friend of mine who spent 2 decades as a waiter once told me he never kept even a single cent of extra change, even when no one was checking. I asked, "Why did you do that?" He smiled, "Because I want to look at myself in the mirror each night and feel no shame." You see, integrity doesn't need applause. It's the calm of standing tall even when no one claps. It's the quiet knowing that even without recognition, you're still on the right path. By now, you probably understand no one out there truly defines who you are. Only you, through your quiet choices, decide that. And that's why, as we age, many of us return to what's simple. Live kindly. Do no harm. Never trade your conscience for momentary ease. Because in the end, you'll have to live with yourself, not just for a moment, but for the rest of your life. Lesson 7. The attitude of living in the present, when this moment is all you truly have. Have you ever sat alone gazing out the window and felt your mind drift away? Maybe towards something from the past, a mistake, a regret, or into the future, a worry, a hazy what if. And then you suddenly realize, I just missed a few minutes of my life. One of my students, 72 years old, once said to me, "I spent my youth regretting the past and fearing the future. Now, near the end of life, I'm finally learning to just sit still and enjoy a cup of hot tea." That sentence, so simple on the surface, was at least to me a profound awakening. Because peace doesn't come from how much we achieve. It comes from whether we can be fully present right here, right now. The philosopher Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Let each moment be your full life." I've carried those words with me for many years, especially during the times I caught myself slipping into old thoughts. If only I had. Or, what if this doesn't turn out well? Do you ever feel that way? Our mind is a master storyteller, but sometimes it tells so many stories that we miss the play unfolding right in front of us. Real life. A cool morning breeze. The sound of birds outside the window. A warm cup of coffee in your hands. The gentle smile of your partner looking your way. All of it can quietly pass you by simply because your mind is off somewhere else, lost in what doesn't exist. To live as a Stoic isn't to feel nothing. It's to place your heart exactly where it belongs in the now. Not letting the past haunt you, not letting the future terrify you, but simply living this moment as if it's the only one you truly have. One exercise I often suggest to my older friends is this. Each morning upon waking, take a deep breath and say to yourself, "I am here," and that is enough. Because the truth is, you cannot go back and change the past. And the future, it hasn't arrived. The only moment you can ever touch is this one. So live it fully, without regret. Lesson 8. The attitude of embracing fate. When you don't just endure, but learn to love what happens. I once asked an older friend, "Do you regret anything in life?" He smiled, paused for a moment, then said slowly, "I lost a son in an accident. There's no pain greater than that. But do I regret it? No, I don't regret loving him with all my heart. And now I'm learning to love the pain too, because it's part of my life." I went silent, because he wasn't just accepting fate, he was embracing it. That is amor fati, to love one's fate, one of the deepest teachings of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus once said, "Don't wish for things to happen as you want. Wish to love what does happen." It's not an easy message, especially for those who have suffered loss, illness, betrayal, or loneliness. But precisely because it's difficult, it becomes a noble way to live. Amor fati doesn't mean you have to be cheerful about painful events. It means you don't resent fate because you understand that fate too shapes your growth. I once met a retired woman, 63, who was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. Instead of falling into fear, she started walking every morning, eating healthier, and learning to paint something she had never dared to try before. She told me, "I don't know how much time I have, but I know each day is a gift. And I've come to love even this illness because it woke me up from a long sleep. And you? Are you still fighting what has happened? Or have you started to make peace with it?" Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nature brings nothing that you cannot bear. And if it comes to you, it means you already carry within you the strength to endure it." Amor fati is the lesson of those who've walked through storms. They no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead, they say, "This has happened, so now I will live with it with dignity and with love for life." Like a pine tree standing tall in the wind. It doesn't question why the wind comes. It simply grows stronger through every storm. Look back on your life, your losses, your turns, your wounds. Maybe you haven't forgotten. Maybe it still hurts. But if you look closely, you'll see they've shaped you into the steady person you are today. And if that's true, then why not begin to love those very things? Lesson 9. The attitude of lifelong learning. When you keep growing, even if you're no longer young. A few years ago, I taught a Stoic philosophy class for seniors. In the back of the room sat a petite, gentle, 74-year-old woman. She always sat quietly, diligently taking notes. One day I asked her, "Why do you still study? Surely you already know so much." She smiled a soft, gentle smile and said, "I'm not learning to become anyone. I'm learning to keep my soul from going numb." That sentence stayed with me for days. Because you see, many people believe that at a certain age, learning is no longer necessary. But to a Stoic, learning is never a luxury. It's the way we keep the soul awake. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, once wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." It sounds simple, but it's a guiding light for the later years of life. Because when you stop learning, you stop evolving. And when you stop evolving, you begin to freeze inside the outdated version of yourself. A retired doctor friend of mine, 68 years old, just started learning to play the guitar. He told me not to perform, but to feel awkward again, to rediscover the humility of being a beginner. And he added something I'll never forget. "I want to keep the softness of a student, not the rigidity of someone who's seen it all." Learning isn't just about information. Sometimes it's about opening up to a new perspective, learning to forgive, learning to be silent, learning to let go. Have you ever caught yourself being stubborn just because I'm too old to change? I've been there. But the more I live, the more I understand. Age doesn't guarantee wisdom, only continual learning does. Marcus Aurelius, a ruler in a time of chaos, still wrote in his journal every day, not to show off, but to remind himself, I'm still learning how to become the person I admire. Lifelong learning is a journey with no final destination, but that's what makes it so endless and so beautiful. And that's why those who carry a spirit of learning always seem young, even when their hair turns white. Because the heart of a true student doesn't harden with time. It only grows deeper, wiser, and brighter with every experience. Lesson 10. The attitude of calm speech, when timely silence is stronger than 1,000 justifications. I once had an elderly mentor. He had been a lawyer, had debated fiercely, had won countless arguments. But over time, something changed. He began to speak less and less. I asked him, "Why don't you correct people when they misunderstand you?" He smiled and said, "The older I get, the more I realize calmness is the most powerful response." Have you ever felt that when someone attacks you, misrepresents you, wounds you, and every part of you wants to strike back, but instead, you choose silence? Not because you've lost, but because you've outgrown the need to win. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "Silence is the armor of those who know their worth." And it's true. The more you understand yourself, the less you feel the need to explain. A 60-year-old friend of mine, a retired elementary school teacher, was once at a gathering when someone remarked sarcastically, "So you were a teacher, I guess. Retirement must be pretty tight." The whole table went quiet, waiting for a reaction, but she simply smiled and said, "I'd say I'm quite rich, in peace," and said nothing more. You see, calmness is not weakness. It's strength under control. It's fire that has become light. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "Before you speak, let your mind ask. Is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind?" And if the answer to all three isn't yes, remain silent, because words are no longer tools for reaction, but reflections of inner quality. Have you noticed the people we respect the most are often the ones who speak the least? But when they do, every word carries weight. They don't speak to argue. They speak to remind us. We can choose to live with dignity even when others try to drag us down. So next time someone provokes you, pause, take a breath, and ask, does this answer really need to be said? Or has my calm already spoken for me? Because sometimes a calm silence is the kindest, most powerful response of all. Lesson 11. The attitude of patience, when you no longer rush to be understood. I once worked with a man named Walter, 63 years old, a former senior manager at a large company. One late afternoon over coffee, he said something that stayed with me for a long time. The older I get, the more patient I become with not needing people to understand me right away. Have you ever felt that way? When we're young, we feel restless when someone misunderstands us. We get frustrated when our efforts go unnoticed. We want to fix it, explain, clarify everything. But there comes a time in life when you realize staying silent and letting time speak for you is a quiet kind of wisdom. The philosopher Seneca once wrote, "Just because something is slow doesn't mean it's not happening. Great things take time." And it's true. Things of real value, from a towering tree to a truly honorable human being, can't be rushed. They need time, patience, and the calm to withstand temporary unfairness. I once met a 59-year-old woman who had been misunderstood by her family over a delicate issue. She didn't lash out. She didn't demand apologies. She simply continued living truthfully and gently and let time do its work. 2 years later, people realized she had been right all along. I asked her, "Did you feel bitter?" She smiled. "No, I felt at peace. Because I knew if I had lost my calm that day, I would have lost myself." You see, patience isn't about waiting while suffering. True patience is waiting with self-possession without letting your peace be disturbed. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor known for his calm, once wrote, "Everything needs time to bloom. Force only brings distortion. So next time you feel dismissed, misunderstood, or underappreciated, try doing nothing. Let your silence and dignity speak for you, because the wise are never in a hurry. They know truth, like light, will always find its way." Lesson 13. The attitude of stillness, when you discover the power of being alone. One autumn afternoon, I sat in a park near my home. An elderly man, likely in his 70s, sat on the bench beside me holding a book, gazing off into the distance. We said nothing for 10 whole minutes, and yet it didn't feel awkward. Finally, he quietly said, "The older I get, the more I cherish moments when no one says anything, and everything still feels at peace." I understood, because I too have been learning how to feel whole in the quiet. In Stoic philosophy, stillness is not an escape from life. It's a return to the inner room where no one can harm you unless you allow them to. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can retreat into yourself whenever you want. Nowhere is more peaceful than that." But have we truly learned to be still? Or are we only quiet on the outside while the mind stays loud? Many people fear being alone, because when you're alone, there's no running from yourself. But those who have grown, who have endured, who have weathered pain, gradually begin to realize it is in stillness that true healing begins. One of my students, a woman in her 60s, once told me, "When I was younger, I hated being home alone. Now I brew tea, play soft music, watch sunlight pass through the window, and feel like I need nothing more." Can you feel that not all emptiness is loneliness? Some silences are sacred space where the soul can breathe, the heart can soften, and you can finally be yourself. No roles, no masks, no effort. Epictetus once said, "The one who can be alone without feeling lack has discovered fullness within." And that's exactly it. When you can sit quietly without a phone, without TV, without needing praise, that's when you truly own your life. Stillness is not withdrawal from people. It's the pause that brings you back to yourself, complete, grounded, and at peace. So give yourself that pause. Turn off the TV. Put down the phone. Sit. Take a deep breath. And ask, what am I hearing from within? You might be surprised to find your heart isn't empty at all. It's just been waiting for you to come home. Lesson 15. The attitude of embracing impermanence, when you understand that loss is part of the journey. One day I received a phone call from a former student. His voice trembled as he shared that his wife had just passed away after 38 years together. He said quietly, "I still set a place for her at the table. But each morning I'm learning to sit alone without bitterness." Without bitterness. Only someone who has lived deeply can speak those words. Because loss is something none of us can escape, especially after crossing the halfway mark of life. Loved ones leave. Our bodies no longer feel like they used to. Friends become fewer. Careers fade into the background. And slowly, a quiet truth settles in. Everything is changing whether we like it or not. But this is exactly where Stoicism arrives, like a calm companion. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Whatever happens is part of nature's flow." Loss is not unusual. It is the very fabric of life. Have you ever held on to a keepsake for years? A letter, a shirt, a scent. Trying to keep something from slipping away, I have. But I've come to understand objects don't preserve time, and memories don't preserve people. The most beautiful thing is this: to love something fully knowing It will one day be gone, and to love it anyway. Like a flower nearing the end of its bloom. You don't force it to stay fresh forever. You simply admire it, savor it, and give thanks for the moment it blossomed. Epictetus once taught, when you embrace someone you love, remember you are embracing a human being, not something eternal. If one day they leave, you will feel sorrow, but you will not be shattered. Not because you're cold, but because you understand impermanence is not a tragedy, it's nature. And when you accept it, you find peace. I once told a friend who had just lost his mother, don't try to forget her, but don't try to hold on too tightly either. Carry what she taught you. Live in a way that honors her. Let her love become a part of you. Dear friend, to live with Stoicism does not mean to live without feeling. It means to live so deeply that you can love something fully and still let it go with grace. Because you know, nothing lasts forever, but how you face loss can be eternal. Thank you for staying with me through to this final lesson. I believe you've been listening not just with your ears, but with a heart that has weathered many seasons of life. These 15 lessons won't give us control over the world, but they do help us master ourselves. And sometimes that's all we truly need. If you found these lessons valuable, share them with someone who might need them. Because sometimes a single well-timed word can save a soul on the verge of falling.